Soil is a vital living ecosystem that supports plants, animals, and humans. It's teeming with billions of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes that are the foundation of a complex ecosystem. Viewing soil this way reflects a fundamental shift in the way we care for it. Welcome to the Soil Health Podcast from Monocultures Farm.
I'm Jay Fear, Soil Health Specialist with North Dakota NRCS, and we are doing this podcast from the Monocultures Farm, which I think is a really good location to discuss grazing cover crops. And our guest today is Ken Miller. And Ken's ranch is located at Fort Rice, North Dakota. He's a longtime conservationist, member of the North Dakota Grazing Coalition, longtime no-till cropping systems, rotational grazing system, cover crops, Leopold Award winner for North Dakota in 2017. So Ken, let's start talking about how you got involved with cover crops, and then from there we'll move into some more specific questions. But give us a little background.
Well, I was working for the Burleigh County Soil District at the time. That was in 2006, and when we started doing cover crops on a test plot, and I could see tremendous successes there. So I tried it on some of our own land, some really tough soils, very sandy soils, clay panda gumbo, and this was after a crop, and we had tremendous success the first year. So I was sold on cover crops. And after that, we planted these mixes, whether it was after a crop or as full season crops, full season covers. And we had, again, for utilizing it with the livestock to graze it.
Okay, so that kind of gave you your start into it and evolving from there. So what type of fencing do you use? I got a number of questions here that people commonly ask, and this would be the first one. So give us a little information, if you would, on how you fence a paddock.
Fencing generally use one wire, high tensile electric, or either for the borders, and then for interior for cross fence we use polywire with a reel. And it's again, with the Energizer they have these days, it's cattle get trained to it very quickly, and they get one shock and they're trained. So it's very, very effective and very economical to put up, and doesn't take a lot of time.
So when you put up the fencing, give us an idea what the size of an average paddock might be for you.
The size of the paddock, usually, like say if we got 100 or 150 cows, pairs, I would say maybe a 20-acre paddock would be probably the biggest I would like, and sometimes even go quite a bit smaller than that. So again, the higher the stock density, the better you can utilize that cover crop.
Okay. And so once you move them into a paddock, how frequently do the moves come? How long are you in the paddock before you move to the next one?
Generally, again, it varies on what the height is, because we'll generally from 1 to 2 days, and we generally like to take probably half of the mix, trample the other half, again, to feed the soil biology. I say the critters below the soil are probably more important than the critters above the soil.
And that half, is that half by weight, or?
That'd be half by weight, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. And how about the water? We got to have water in these. Sometimes you're grazing different times a year, and so what kind of options do you use?
Yeah. Well, for example, in the wintertime, if the snow is right, they usually don't even go for water, but we'll still have water available, a winter tank or a fountain, a winter energized fountain. But so that'll work in the wintertime. In the summer, again, generally our fields, we've got water out in our native pastures, so they can go off that and get water off the field.
So what I'm understanding with the paddock, you're going to basically graze that top half by weight, and you try to get the trample on the bottom half by weight. And the water has various options that you have available, and some I would envision them maybe walking further than other times, but they have it available.
Right, yeah, you definitely want available. Yep. For performance of the animals, the water is quite important.
So how do you monitor the health of these livestock? Is there any techniques you've used?
Well, it just mainly visual, and again, when we have this diverse mixture, it seems like the health of the animals just seems to be getting better and better as we evolving with the use of cover crops. So it's the health part of it. Again, you're feeding them very high quality nutrition, and again, with the frequent moves, I mean, we got less stress on animals, and I think it just shows up where our vet bill is way less than it used to be.
And so I've heard you mention before that you've used some of the fecal samples, frozen fecal samples. Can you give us a little information on that as well for monitoring?
Yes, we'll monitor called nut ball. So we'll take fecal samples and send it off and get it analyzed, and it'll show exactly what the nutrients are in what the animals are eating. And we're seeing that it's tremendous high in nutrition. So it's another good tool to use to monitor your animals.
Another one of the issues that I hear people bring up and want to discuss a little bit is there a compaction concern? Because this is on cropland. So tell us your experience regarding compaction.
Yeah, with compaction doesn't seem to be near the issue that I thought it would be. Again, I thought if you got a hard rain, you'd have to move the cattle off. But again, once you start building the soil and getting that litter, and again, with the cover crops, they aren't stepping on the soil. It's basically stepping on it's like a sponge, it's stepping on the cover. So and again, it's the timing. They're in that pasture for that short time. So if they're in there for a long period of time, then you would get compaction. But again, the short time, it's not an issue.
Okay. So out of our 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, I'm thinking you probably have grazed all of these at one time or another. And maybe you would consider summarizing them a little bit in regards to what your experience has been.
Well, we've grazed...
Can I stop you? Can I grab your phone out of your pocket? Because I'm getting
Oh, sit it down here.
a little interference.
No.
You're good to go.
Okay. I guess we grazed covers at pretty much pretty much every month out of the year we can utilize it. Again, it just depends on what type of cover you grow, and again, it really helps. I guess I should probably start over. I lost train of thought about. That's
okay,
all right.
I'll re-ask the question.
Yeah,
okay.
that's all right.
Out of the 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, I think you probably have grazed all of these at one time or another. But just wanted you to, if you'd consider sharing your experiences on the different seasons. Okay. Are they available?
Yeah, definitely up here, like say in North Dakota, it's you can plant a biennial in the fall, and you can utilize that in the spring for early grazing, or you could use it for haying if you needed to be, or you could graze it early and then re-graze it again. Then again, you can plant it in the spring, cool season mix we call that, and we could graze that probably 60 days later, and then again graze the regrowth in November, December, January, whenever you wanted to. And then if you can want to plant a bit in the summer, like say in June, mid-June, a warm season mix, then you could graze that in September, October, November, December, whatever you need be, I guess you can utilize it then.
So with a little planning, I'm hearing you say that you can find a fit to graze a cover crop.
Yes,
regardless of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it takes some education. You've got to experiment and try different types of plants and see what works. But again, you can utilize it. Like I say, again, it just takes some planning.
Okay. And then too, sometimes people also bring up safety concerns for livestock, maybe regarding prussic acid or nitrates or those type concerns. So, and I think you've grazed primarily multi-species covers, but you maybe have also done some monocultures over the years as well. So your thoughts on safety for the livestock?
I guess, again, safety on as far as when you graze it. Again, as far as with prussic acid, you got to kind of watch it. You don't probably want to graze it right when it freezes, and just wait a couple of weeks after. Or when we grazed a monoculture, which we don't want to do that anymore. It's pretty much all the diversity of plants. And then you seem like the more diverse the mix is, the less issues you have with as far as bloat or things like that, because they can pick and choose. And again, it's not eating one species, so it makes very safe to graze that. I'm not worried about grazing.
Okay. Tell us too, regarding the legumes, do you use an inoculant or how do you do that?
Yeah, it's very important to use a inoculant. Again, we don't use commercial fertility on it, very rarely, and so again, but it's very important to use the inoculant. And again, it takes different inoculants for different plants, so you gotta learn which ones, which species you're using, I guess.
How about the seeding depth? A lot of these are polycultures that you've evolved to, and what kind of depth do you seed this mixture at?
Normally we seed about an inch. It seems like they're small seeds. It's probably a little too deep for them, but the larger seeds, it's probably a little shallow for them, but it's kind of a balance there, and it seems like we don't have any issue as far as emergence. It's not they seem to all come through. So.
Now you also had a no-till cropping system over the years as well, so herbicide carryover concerns?
That is a very, very important. You've got to be aware of what your next crop's going to be and what your past crop has been and what chemicals you used on that, because some of these chemicals will take out your cover. So it's very important to be aware of what you're planting and what chemicals you had used.
So read the label.
Read the label or check with your agronomist or chemical company.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. How about grass finishing? Is there an option there or a fit there maybe for the people in the livestock industry that are thinking about grass finishing or maybe dabbling with it a little bit? What's your thoughts?
Well, again, it seems like there's getting more and more demand for grass finished, and again with this cover crops, you got the very high quality later in the year, so you can finish those animals. They're getting some of the results the same as they are in the feedlots by just feeding these high nutrition cover crops. So it's a very good fit.
Okay, and so too, what about weaning? Is there a fit that a person could look at using a cover crop for weaning as well?
Yeah, definitely. What I would do there is before you wean, say a couple of weeks before you wean, run the cow and calf on the cover crops, and then when you wean, the calves will be used to that diet, and they'll wean very well. And again, it's very high, very good nutrition, and it cuts a lot of the stress away from the animals because they're used to that feed. Where before, if you went from a native prairie to a feedlot situation, it was tremendous stress on the animals. So this here is another way of being way more efficient and more profitable just by, again, eliminate the stress and the disease on the animals.
So I have one closing question for you, Ken, and if you have any additional comments, you're welcome to make them at that time as well. But that is our native grasslands, our native perennials, pastures, and the importance of them. And you and I have visited before where we have fewer acres each year in North Dakota, and I think other states as well. And so do cover crops offer an opportunity to strengthen our grasslands and strengthen the livestock industry with animals on the land? What's your thoughts on the role cover crops can play with our native grazing systems?
Well, it definitely will supplement your native range, and it gives it more rest. When especially later in the fall, when the nutritional level starts to drop off on the native, and then you pull them off your native pastures and put them on covers, you'll give it way more time to recover, and it'll actually improve your native range that way. So, and we need to improve our native range, and we degraded it just like we've done our soils. So with the covers, you can make a benefit on both the cropping and the native pastures.
Very good. Well, Ken, we appreciate you participating in today's podcast, Grazing Cover Crops. And to those who are looking at putting a cover crop in the future, be sure to visit with your local conservation district or NRCS office for species that work in your area. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
The Soil Health Podcast is a production of the Monocultures Farm. Monocultures Farm exists to foster natural resource education and systems approach conservation. This 150-acre demonstration farm, located just east of Bismarck, North Dakota, was established in 2009 and draws people from all over the world. The farm is owned and operated by Burleigh County Soil Conservation District, which has an office in Bismarck, North Dakota. Additional financial and technical support is provided by the North Dakota Department of Health Water Quality Division, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture.